There are many uses for an accordion style hinge. Here we have a folding partition wall that when it folds up like an accordion. If we look over at the punch gun, we can see we've got an accordion style hinge going on for that. And a common place that you see it is in the gates that block off areas for small kids or dogs. Let's go over to the wall. We'll do something like this. Actually, we'll set it up with 3 panels. So we'll just have 1, 2, 3 panels, kind of like a trifold brochure. And we'll use this as our reference. So let's go ahead and close that down. And I'm going to come over to Create Box. And I'm just going to create, running down the Z, I'm going to create 1 flat poly. And actually, let's tap the right key, arrow key, twice so we can get 3 panels. Okay, so it looks something like this. And let's go to weight shade. We're going to add a weight map. And so for the first set of points, these 4 points that make up this panel, let's call this new panel 01, and we'll give it 100% weight value. So the initial value will be 100%, which is the default settings. Okay, so I'm going to deselect those points and select the 4 points that make up this middle panel and call this panel 2, create, and deselect those 2 and select the 4 points that make up the last panel and call this panel 3. Okay, so we've got our weight maps that we're going to use, and we got our object. Now we just need to save it and send it over. So S for save. We'll call this trifold 001. Save, and we'll send it over to layout. Okay, so now I have my panel in layout. I'm going to drop to wireframe. Okay, and let's make it. We'll make it double-sided later. Actually, while we're at it, why don't we go ahead and just make it double-sided? So we'll make it double-sided there. And let's move over to the left view, and we're going to draw some bones that we're going to use to drive this. If we didn't want to use bones, we could have separate objects, but I figured we'd go ahead and use bones, and then we can keep just one object in the scene. If we had a lot of stuff going on, that's not a bad idea. Okay, so I'm going to come over to the Setup tab, and I'm going to draw child bones. So I'm just going to draw the first bone outside of the trifold, and then the next one I'll just go from edge to edge, something like that. Okay, and let's go back to the first one, and I'm going to move it down a little bit, but because I did that, I need to rest it. R for rest. I'm going to turn all the bones on, and let's go to perspective view. And if I take these and rotate them, okay, we can see that we're going to be able to bend these, except I'm going to limit which bone affects which part of the geometry. For this first bone, I'm going to go to P for properties, and I'm going to set its strength to 0. That's the equivalent of turning the bone off where it says bone active, except I like to use bone strength 0 so that if I go and use bone on off here, I don't end up having to remember which ones to deactivate. So if you set them to strength 0, it's the equivalent, but later down the road it might make your life a lot easier. For the first bone, I'm going to choose panel 1. For the second bone, panel 2. And the third, panel 3. I'm going to test this. And when I rotate this, there we go. It's moving that one. And when I rotate this, it's moving that one. And when I rotate this, it's moving this one. Okay. And of course, by rotating this one, it moves all of the bones. But okay, so there's our setup. So now what I want to do is set it up so that all I have to do is rotate one bone, this bone right here, and it'll animate the entire accordion hinge. So I'm going to close this down, and what we'll do is we'll use an expression. There's a couple ways to go about doing it, but we'll use an expression for this setup. So I'm going to go to the graph editor right here, and I'm going to make a new expression. So new, and I'm going to call this H plus. That's going to be the hinge positive value, and for the value, let's delete this. I'm going to move this over just so we can take a look. We're going to rotate it in the heading. So I'm going to select this heading, append to expression. So that drops, that's basically saying take the value of this channel, but I want it to go a little faster, so I'm going to times it by 2. Okay, so that whatever I apply this expression to will use this channel's information, but twice the value. Okay, and let's create one more. I'm going to call this H minus for negative value, and I'll put in a minus sign there, and then I'll append to expression. Let's do the same thing, times 2. Okay, so we've got our two expressions, and now we just need to apply them to the right bones. Okay, so I'm going to move this down, and I'm going to select this bone, and for its heading I'm going to use the negative value. So I'm going to apply. It puts a dot there that lets me know that it's done that. I'm going to come to this bone, come to heading, and apply. For the middle bone, I want a positive value, so I'll switch to positive, go to heading, and apply. So I've got my expressions attached to these bones now, so that whenever I go to rotate this, we get the accordion hinge. Let me undo, rotate, so that we can get a good look at this. And actually we can drop to shaded view, and let's go to the surface editor, and let's just give it a color just to dress it up a little bit. Okay, and just so that we can see, I'm actually going to go to texture wire. Okay, and whenever I rotate this, it hinges. Okay, so if I had 20 panels, all I'd have to do is set up the expression on each bone, but it's pretty, as you saw, it's a pretty fast setup. If I wanted to do the punch gun type setup, or the gate setup that has dual, well, I would just set the same bone structure up and have it flip, so that I could have two sets, which gives you the diamond pattern as it goes. So there you go, a quick way of setting up an accordion style hinge. This would be a good setup for a tri-card brochure, or if we were really going after the let's open up the image editor and go here. It would be a good setup for these folding partition walls as well.